Come along for the ride.
Welcome to the Solar Coaster, the wild ride to the solar industry told by the people living it every day. I'm Anna Covert.
And I'm Alex Herrera.
We often think of solar energy as a relatively straightforward equation. You build the panels, the sun shines, and you generate power. But what happens when a giant invisible climate pattern thousands of miles away decides to rewrite the rules of how much sunlight actually reaches the ground? Specifically, I am talking about the massive El Niño event forecasted for 2026, which scientists are already calling a Godzilla event. It is set to disrupt global weather, but its impact on the solar industry might be one of the most overlooked stories of the year.
It really is. When people hear about El Nino, they usually think of mudslides in California, intense hurricanes in the Atlantic, or severe droughts triggering wildfires in Canada. Those are the dramatic, highly visible disasters. But for the solar industry, the impact is quieter but financially devastating if you are not prepared. This warming of the Central Pacific Ocean alters atmospheric circulation globally. That means cloud patterns shift dramatically. Some places will get significantly more sunlight than average, while others will be cast into unexpected shade for months on end.
So, we are not just talking about a minor dip in performance. We are talking about a massive shift in regional energy production. How much of a deviation from the norm are we actually expecting with this upcoming cycle?
The data suggests we could see deviations of around 10% or more from historical averages in many regions, and it goes both ways. Take India, for instance. Rajasthan, which hosts some of the largest solar installations in the world, is actually projected to see a 15% increase in solar irradiance. On the flip side, major solar producers in Chile and eastern China are looking at substantial drops in sunlight. If you are an operator in those areas, a 10% drop in fuel, which is what sunlight essentially is for these plants, can completely break your financial model.
That is a massive swing. If I am running a solar farm in Chile and suddenly my primary resource drops by 10%, that directly threatens my ability to pay back loans or meet grid commitments. But this brings up an interesting question. El Nino is not a new phenomenon. We have known about it for centuries. Why is the solar industry only now starting to scramble to quantify its effects?
It comes down to how much the industry has matured and how the economics have changed. If you look back just 5 or 10 years, the solar landscape was very different. Projects were heavily supported by government incentives, feed-in tariffs, and generous subsidies. The margins were wide enough that you did not need to worry about a temporary 10% drop in sunlight. You calculated your expected output based on simple, long-term historical averages, built the facility, and the incentives covered the rest. But today, those training wheels are gone.
Right? The market has become incredibly competitive. Subsidy programs are fading out, and solar developers are operating on razor-thin margins. They are selling power directly into highly volatile wholesale markets.
Exactly. Today, you cannot just assume you will be able to sell all your electricity at a fixed profitable rate, especially during peak summer hours when the grid might face congestion. Now, if your project underperforms during a crucial period because of unexpected cloud cover, or if you produce too much energy when prices are negative, you are in trouble. Financial backers and lenders are demanding much more precise risk assessments before they write a check. They want to know how a project will perform not just in an average year, but during an extreme weather year.
It seems like we are moving away from the era of simple estimations. If the old way of using basic historical averages is dead, what does the new approach look like? How do you model something as chaotic as a Godzilla El Nino?
It requires a shift to high-resolution physics-based modeling. Companies specializing in solar data are now combining satellite imagery with advanced meteorological algorithms to simulate how these climate cycles interact with local topography. We are talking about granular data that looks at historical trends over decades to map out exactly how El Nino correlates with cloud cover in specific coordinates. This allows developers to run stress tests on their financial models before a single panel is installed.
That makes sense for the planning phase, but what about existing plants? If you are already operating a utility scale solar farm and, an El Nino is coming, what practical steps can you take to mitigate the damage?
It changes how you operate the plant on a daily basis. For example, think about smart trackers, the motorized systems that tilt solar panels to follow the sun. In the past, they just followed a simple astronomical path. Now, with advanced forecasting, trackers can use algorithms to adjust their angles based on real-time diffuse light conditions caused by heavy cloud cover. If it is overcast, tilting directly toward where the sun should be might not be the most efficient strategy. You might get more energy by laying the panels flat to capture the scattered light coming through the clouds.
That is fascinating. So the hardware itself has to become smarter and more adaptive to the weather. What about technologies like bifacial panels, which capture light on both sides, or battery storage? Surely they play a role in buffer zones.
Absolutely. Bifacial panels are incredibly useful here because they can capture the albedo, the light reflected from the ground, which can help offset some of the losses from direct sunlight. And battery storage is the ultimate buffer. But batteries are expensive, and you need to know exactly when to charge and discharge them to maximize revenue. If you have data showing that El Nino will cause a dry, sunny spell in your region, you might adjust your storage strategy to capitalize on high evening peak prices. If you expect prolonged cloudiness, you might reserve battery capacity to ensure you can meet your minimum grid commitments without facing penalties.
It sounds like we are witnessing a transition from solar energy being viewed as a simple mechanical infrastructure play to a highly complex data-driven technology play. It is almost like algorithmic trading, but with weather patterns and electrons.
That is a perfect analogy. We are treating weather data the way Wall Street treats financial data. The developers who win in this new environment are the ones who treat data as a core asset. If you can predict how a climate phenomenon like El Nino will impact your asset 3 months from now, you can hedge your positions, schedule maintenance during low irradiance periods, and optimize your power purchase agreements.
But let us look at the broader picture. If these extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and more intense due to global climate change, doesn't this introduce a paradox? The very technology we are relying on to combat climate change, solar power, is itself vulnerable to the volatile weather caused by climate change.
It is a profound feedback loop. Climate change is fueling more intense El Nino and La Nina cycles, which in turn makes solar generation more variable and harder to predict. If we do not build resilience into the system, we risk destabilizing the grids we are trying to decarbonize. This is why grid operators are so concerned. They need to balance supply and demand in real time. If a sudden shift in global weather patterns drops solar output across an entire region by 10%, the grid needs to have the flexibility, whether through storage, transmission, or other clean sources, to fill that gap.
So, the solution isn't just about making individual solar farms more resilient, it is about redesigning the entire energy system to be dynamic. We need to think about grid design, market structures, and regulatory frameworks that can handle this level of volatility.
Precisely. We need a more interconnected grid. If Eastern China is experiencing reduced solar production due to El Nino, but another region has a surplus, we need the transmission infrastructure to move that power where it is needed. We also need market designs that reward flexibility. If the market only pays for bulk energy, developers won't have the incentive to install the batteries or the smart software needed to manage these climate swings.
It really highlights the fact that clean energy is no longer just about deploying hardware. The first wave of the solar transition was about bringing down the cost of panels, which we did incredibly well. The second wave, which we are in right now, is about intelligence. It is about software, forecasting, and managing risk in a changing climate.
You hit the nail on the head. The cheap hardware era got us to where we are, but it won't get us to 100% clean energy. The next decade of solar will be defined by how well we integrate these systems into a chaotic environment. The Godzilla El Nino of 2026 is a wake-up call. It is forcing the industry to grow up, to move past simple assumptions, and to embrace the true complexity of the planet we are trying to save.
It is a reminder that we are not just operating in a market, we are operating within an ecosystem. The sun may be constant, but our atmosphere is anything but. As we wrap up today, it leaves us with a compelling thought. The transition to renewable energy isn't just a challenge of engineering, it is a challenge of adaptation. How we respond to these planetary cycles will determine the stability of our future grid. Thank you for sharing these insights today.
It was a pleasure. The future of energy is complex, but with the right data, it is a challenge we can definitely meet.
Hop on a solar coaster, come along for the ride.
This
episode of The Solar Coaster is narrated using AI-generated technology, representing Anna Covert and Alex Herrera. The material presented is aggregated from publicly available solar industry news sources. All commentary reflects reported industry developments and does not constitute personal opinions, investment advice, or endorsements by the hosts or
Solar
producers.
Coaster is proudly sponsored by Sun Energy Today, redefining what solar means for business and infrastructure. We engineer and deliver large-scale clean energy solutions, from megawatt solar farms to advanced graphene storage, designed for resilience, performance, and measurable return. Sun Energy Today, built to power what's next. Learn more at sunenergytoday.com.